Hello everyone. This is the first chapter of To Kill a Mockingbird. Today we're going to be looking at a specific literary element as well as different things that have happened in this chapter. The first thing I'd like you to do is to actually take notes on these types of narrators. These should be a review for you, but please take a moment to take some notes. First person uses I or me in the text. I always remember that with a 1 looking like an I. Third person limited is limited to one character using words such as he or she. Third person omniscient, all-knowing, or from multiple characters' point of view, such as different movies of Tyler Perry that go from character to character. It's omniscient, it means all-knowing. Here's a hint for your reading. Scout uses I or me, making it first person point of view, which will be one of your questions at the end of the video. Take a few minutes to write down the notes. If you want to go ahead and pause on this slide to take the notes, that'll be fine. This next thing we're going to be looking at are some discussion points in this chapter. The historical context look-fors, the age of the characters, which are basically children. We have Jem and Scout, and how you get those answers, and the setting in the community that's introduced to you right at the exposition of the story. All three of these things are imperative for the reading SOL. So today we're going to take a look at exact text examples of these things. Let's take a look. The first one is the historical context. This means how we can tell what part of history that a text takes place. If you're watching a movie, you can know immediately by cars, by technology, how old a movie is. If you look at this part of the text, you'd understand that somehow it was hotter then. A black dog suffered on a summer's day. Bony mules hitched to Hoover carts flicked flies in the sweltering shade of the live oaks on the square. Men's stiff collars wilted by 9 in the morning. Ladies bathed before noon after the 3 o'clock naps, and by nightfall were like soft tea cakes with frosting of sweat and sweet talcum. People moved slowly then. We're able to tell what part of history this took place in because of things like bony mules hitched to Hoover carts. We don't see horses and buggies now, or mules pulling buggies, but in this part of the time period, that was what's happening. Again, men were going out. A lot of labor was happening in fields and outdoor labor. You can see that. Men's stiff collars wilted by 9 in the morning. There are plenty of events in the story that you'll be able to tell what part of the historical context it takes place in. The next thing we're going to look at are the characters' ages. We can tell that they're children by specific things. Remember to show always the evidence from the text. For example, she was always ordering me out of the kitchen, asking me why I couldn't behave as well as Jem, when she knew he was older, and calling me home when I wasn't ready to come. Our battles were epic and one-sided. Calpurnia always won, mainly because Atticus always took her side. As you can see, is that somebody wouldn't tell someone to behave unless they were a child. It also says our battles were epic and one-sided, which means 9 times out of 10 when you're having an argument with your parents, they usually win. So we can make the assumption that Jem and Scout are young based on the fact that they're having an argument with Calpurnia. And if Atticus took her side, it probably means that he is their dad, excuse me. The last thing we're going to take a look at is setting and community. Usually in the exposition of the story, which is at the very beginning, setting and the characters are introduced. So as you can see, we can really have a picture in our mind of what these things look like, what the town looks like, what the people are like in the town. All different towns have different customs. It says Macomb was an old town, but it was a tired old town when I first knew it. In rainy weather, the streets turned the red slop, grass grew on the sidewalks, the courthouse sagged in the square. So as you can see, it's an older town. It's been there for a long time. It seemed like if you go into more of the text that they were a close-knit town. So as we can see that the setting, we don't have a lot of positive connotations here. We're seeing more negative connotations. Old town, tired. Those are all negative words. In the questions that I'm going to ask in the video, it's very important that you follow these directions because some of these concepts will be covered in the video. So On your own sheet of paper, you do not have to write down the questions, but you do have to answer them in order. You can pause at each question and continue at your own pace. Number 1, how can the reader infer Jem's age on page 1? 2, what is the overall historical context of the story? In other words, how does the reader know exactly what time period this takes place? And you can easily find that if you don't know the specific year, you can put down examples of the historical context. 3, explain the phrase courteous detachment. Think about what the word courteous means and think about what the word detachment means. 4, describe the town the Finches live in, which we talked a little bit before of the text of what they lived in, where they lived. 5, who is the narrator and from what point of view is the story being told? Again, please review the beginning of the notes of exactly what needs to be answered here. 6, what does Charles Baked Harris claim he can do? 7, define the word malevolent and identify the context clues. If you have a hard time finding this word in the text, make sure that you define it on Google or another device. 8, describe Boo Radley based on Scout's description of him. 9, where did the police put Boo because of his behavior instead of jail? 10, how does Boo's appearance reflect what people think of him? And finally, 11, what does Dill dare Jem to do? Please understand that half of the credit will come from actually taking notes, and the other half of credit will be from answering the questions. Please feel free to contact me at any time and pause on the questions so you get all of them for full credit. Next class, Chapter 2, will be due with the video and questions. Have a good evening.